we're going to do today is we're going to take the data that we had from the US Census, where we looked at educational attainment, especially focusing on people over 18 that had already graduated from high school. And we're going to use that data to make our first visualization. We're really thinking about parts of a whole here. And so we're thinking about there's the whole group of people, which are the people that have graduated from high school. And then we want to see how they divide themselves up. What is the highest degree that each of them went on to attain? Whether it's none, or associate, bachelor's, master's, or some sort of professional or doctoral degree. So pie charts are pretty well suited to showing us parts of the whole. I know they get a bad rap a lot of times online, but used correctly, pie charts are pretty useful. And so we should think about how we can make one so that when we want to use it, we can. We're going to learn a couple different ways to make pie charts in this course, but initially we're going to spend some time just thinking about the charts we can make in Excel and understanding what Excel is good at and where its problem areas are. So with that, let's return to the data that we had before. That data is shown here. As before, we spent some time with categories, and then we counted the people that were in those categories, the fraction of people that belong to each one of those, and their percentage. So we want to use that now to make a pie chart. I think maybe the easiest way to do this, or the one that makes the most sense to me, is to think about fraction. So let's go ahead and plot fraction. I don't need all of these. I don't need the fraction of 1. That's 100% of the people. That's sort of the entire pie. I want just the parts of the data that will be the pie slices. And that's here. You can either highlight fraction or you can highlight things without fraction. It doesn't matter. I'm usually in the habit of taking what would be called the header, or the thing that labels our column, and incorporating that as well. I don't always do it, but most of the time I do, and so I'll do it here. What we want to do is we want to make a pie chart, and we would like to insert it into this sheet that we're working in. We're in sheet 1. We're going to put a pie chart inside of this sheet. And so we can find that under Insert in this ribbon. If I click on Insert, then I have over here a section that tells me how to make charts. We could have a recommended chart, but we already know what we want, and so we'll go here, which is pie charts. If I click on this down arrow, it gives me several options. I can have a basic pie chart. I can have a pie chart with a call out. I can have a pie chart that calls out a bar. I can have a 3D chart, which we should avoid, and a donut chart, which is an acceptable way to do things. But we're going to focus on the basics, and so I'm just going to click on pie. Doing so gives me a pie chart. It's not super useful. I'm going to make it bigger just by clicking and dragging, because it violates a lot of design principles. And one of those design principles is that it should be easy to interpret what I'm looking at. But right now I have to look at this blue color, and then I have to figure out what blue color that is down here, and this is tiny and I can't see it. And so maybe it would be better if I could just like directly label things, and this says fraction and I don't know fraction of what. And so it does give me a pie chart initially, and each one of these pie slices does correspond to some of this data. If I hover over it, you'll see this says fraction 0.1, 0.502, so that's this. This one says fraction 0.112, and that's here. And so what this is doing is it's building a pie chart that we're going around clockwise, and going around clockwise is going down the column of the data that I've highlighted. This says 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's because I haven't told it anything differently. It just knows that this is data point 1, data point 2, data point 3, data point 4, data point 5. I have these nice names though that I gave everything, and so wouldn't it be nice if those showed up as at least a minimum? To do that, there's a couple different ways that we can handle it. One would be to right click on this chart and then go to Select Data. It brings up this window here that says Select Data Source. It tells us this is our chart range here, and you can see the highlighted green that's animated, telling us that's where our data is. And then name, this name is at V10. Again, remember the dollar signs are just telling us that things will not change. So this is absolute reference to V10. This is V10. So the name it thinks is fraction. That's not actually what I want. And so there's a couple different ways I could handle changing the name. I could go in here and I could type what I want, which is degrees after high school, and hit enter. And now you can see that this title's different. Or I could have used a reference. And so going to select data, I could also go in here, and this button lets me select something from the sheet. So now instead of equals degrees after high school, I'm going to click on this cell. And then when I hit enter, now I've referenced T10. And if I say OK, now it says degrees post high school, which is the same as what's in here. And so if I decide, the advantage of doing it this way is that if I decide that I don't want post, but I really did like the wording after, and I use that, because this title points at that cell, whatever I put in that cell gets updated. That doesn't solve this legend down here, but it gives us an idea of how we might do it. I can go to select data again, and I can think about what's going on here. I have Y values, and then maybe I can read a little bit more. What's exactly in here will depend on our chart type, but this is a pie chart, and so this says horizontal category, axis labels. Category, that sounds useful. And so that category is these numbers here. Instead of pressing enter, I can also just click this button that I used to get in. If I say OK, now you can see these have been renamed to match what's in each one of these cells. This is really small, but I can format it the same way I would format anything. If I click on it and have it highlighted, I can go up here and change the font. So how about 24? Now I have something that's large, a little bit easier to see. Okay, what else could we do? Well, it turns out that using legends is something I don't really like. If we could get away with somehow direct labeling, that would be nice. And that would allow us then to somehow, if we could reformat this so that we could get better design, that would be nice. How do we do that? Well, you can notice that when I've clicked on this chart, something else appears in this ribbon, and that's chart design. So let's click on that. And then I can add chart elements. If I click on here, you could see I could add a chart title. Right now, our chart title is above the chart. It says we could have it center overlaid, which means it's going to overlap with the data. I don't like that. We could have no chart title if we want. It'll look like this. But I think the chart title we had to start with is probably just fine. So we'll say above chart. There's all sorts of other things. There's legend, none, right, top, left, bottom. So right now it's on the bottom. I could put it on the left if I wanted. Maybe we think that's slightly better. Doesn't really matter. We have a quick layout. This gives us other options. You can see that right now we have something where there's a legend that's separate from the chart. Something that looks a little bit like this, or maybe like this when we started. But we could also put elements inside the pie chart. That's layout 4. If I click on this, then now it has placed these labels as close as it can to being inside each of these pie slices. They're small again, but again, we know how to fix that. So let's go in, maybe not 24, but 18. This is a little bit better. We have now labels and also what the values are. If you don't like the values, you can go back to chart design and try a quick layout and see if there's other options. Maybe this one, that gives us names instead and not data. So you can play around and see what you like. Something else that you might not like is that there's colors that are somewhat similar. So this blue and that blue, there is good contrast. There's this green and that red, that's good. But maybe you don't like the way this green looks, or maybe you want a blue that's even more different from that blue. And so how could we solve that? One way is to click on here, or to say change, we can say change colors. We'll do that first. And what this does is it goes around the pie chart, and it goes dark blue, red, green, purple, light blue, orange. And we don't have enough slices, but this is what it's doing. Dark blue, red, green, purple, and then light blue. And so I could click on a different one of these and it will change the colors. However, it might be that you just don't like the green. And so what I could do is double click on the green one. It brings up a format data points, which allows me to control each thing individually. And then this fill in line lets me go in and adjust the fill. The color right now is this green, but maybe I don't like that green. Maybe instead, and you can't see the whole pane I have, unfortunately, so let me just shrink this window down. Maybe instead of that, I like the orange that's here. And if I click that, you'll see I've recolored just this pie slice. I don't actually like this color palette, but at least now you know how to change colors individually if you like. Something else that's a problem, of course, is that it's hard to read some of this text because this gray on purple, I think, is fairly hard to read. That's a low contrast color pair. I could change all the colors at once. So by selecting this, just like we would have changed its size, I can go to Home, and then I can say the color for this font should be black instead. That does increase the contrast a little bit. It makes things better. Sometimes on dark colors like this, though, or maybe you even have a pie slice that's a darker color. So instead of this purple, maybe I have a darker purple, and black is hard, but I want black on this lighter orange. And so we can adjust them individually by just clicking again. So you can see if I click once on the text, it highlights all the text that's related. Clicking on that text one more time gives me only that instance. Now I can go back to Home and say this one individual element should be white. And now it's easier to read. So that's something else we have control over. Something else that we might want to have control over if we look at chart design is that we have like all these other pre-built styles that you can go through. I'm not going to choose them, but go ahead and have a look. I can click here, see them a little bit bigger. You can see different styles to play with. But what about lines? If I click on this so that I have the entire pie chart, I can go back to my format data series. Again, I had fill, and then I had border. So right now the border is white. What if the border was black? Maybe I'd like that more. I'm not sure I do, but we're just playing around right now. I could also change the width so that these borders are much, much thicker if I feel like that might look better. Some people like these bold borders. Maybe you like the way that looks. It kind of gives it almost a stained glass look. I can also say instead of this border, I want no border whatsoever, no line. That can also look good if you've chosen good colors. Other things that you can do, you have add shadows to things on here. I don't think that's a great idea. Glow, soft edge, 3D format. Play around, see with what you like. We'll talk about design choices later. We have size. This is adjusting the size of this chart. And then there are also some properties. If I click on this, I might even get other options. And so you can see now that I have not just the whole chart selected, but this wheel selected, I have other options. Angle of first slice. And what if I rotate this a little bit? You can see that it's going to spin the circle a little bit. So instead of 90, let's try 270. I can just type that in. Now I have a big slice on top and it goes around. And the reason you might want to do that is because if you do this correctly, maybe instead of 270, I could have 275, you start to be able to take this text that didn't fit, and if I click on it one more time, I can look at it individually, and I can even drag it around and place it inside of this pie slice. And so by changing the angle of the slices, I can make sure that I can put the label inside of each one of the slices if I want. So that's one reason you might do that. I think at this point, we've made a pie chart, and all we would really want to do, if this is the design that you like, which again, I'm not convinced I like this, but that's not the point of this particular video. We're just exploring how you make pie charts and how you might change it. The last thing to do is just to export this or to save this graphic. And there's a couple different ways that you could do it. One is I could right click and then I could say save as picture. And that's probably the easiest one for us to use right now. If you know how to take a screenshot, you'll actually get better results by doing that than what we're doing here. But for now, this is fine. And then we can save this as several different formats. I think for now, let's save this as a PNG. All of these have their own use, and we will talk about them in the course. But for now, let's just save this as PNG. I'm going to go ahead and save this on my desktop. It's going to be pie, and then I will say save. Then if I go ahead and double click on that on my computer, it brings it up way too big for you, but I'll shrink it down to be in the window. And there we go. That's the pie chart that we've just made, exported, and ready for use somewhere else. So that's it for pie charts today. Really, again, we were just looking at how to take the data we already had and turn it into a pie chart in Excel, looking a little bit at how Excel gives us control over the design elements. We didn't really make the best design choices today, but the entire course is going to be focused on how we can improve them. And maybe later on, we'll revisit pie charts once we know a little bit more about what we're trying to do. But at least for now, you know how to make a pie chart and how to change things around a little bit to give it your own little flair. With that, have fun making some pie charts.